Well, good evening. Just make sure everything's in order here. Thank you for being here tonight. Let's open with a very quick word of prayer. Our Father in heaven, we thank you for your creation. We thank you for the evidence you've left through your creation to know that you do exist. We are so glad that you have created us and built us and loved us and want to know us. And we are so thankful that we can come to that by examining the evidences before us. We pray all this in your Son's name. So we're going to do a quick summary of last week. I tend to do that. So last week we looked at worldviews, discussed that these are very important, how you perceive the world around you. It's how you evaluate right and wrong, how to view yours and your neighbor actions, and how you determine what is true or what is false. And, for this audience, not everyone around us is a Christian. And simply, a lot of people around us do not believe in either a religious or a deity of any sort. Those might take positions of being an atheist or agnostic, skeptics or infidels. And as we've progressed through the class last time, we came down that we're going to be looking at just two worldviews through the remainder of the class, which is those who take a literal view of the Bible as being a true account of history, young earth creationists, another way to state that, and those that just disregard the necessity of a God at all, and that'd be an evolutionary point of view. And at the very end, we left off at the treatment of theories that try to blend together those two kinds of concepts. And so we'll do a very quick summary. I collapsed this down, and this is not working. How come? Do we? Oh. Maybe it does have an on button here. Slider. Sorry, everybody. Okay. Okay. Like technology is not my thing, right? Okay. So, anyway, let's take a quick look side by side of the gap and the day-age theory. Both of these are the types of theories that are, kind of developed by well-meaning Christians trying to blend together the concepts of long geological ages and the Bible. Excuse me while I cough here. Essentially, both theories are trying to insert millions and billions of years into the Genesis account. The proponents feel compelled to align with what science is trying to tell them, that it takes a long time for the Grand Canyon to form. But both of these theories essentially try to twist Scripture to make that happen, and that's always going to be the case when you try to blend evolutionary theory. So the gap theory is essentially, you start in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, period, stop. Put up a stop sign right there. And before you get to verse 2, insert billions of years. That's the gap. So the verse 1 of Genesis, billions of years, verses 2 and the remainder. What happened in that billions of years is the fossil record, is mountain building, is erosional processes, everything that has created essentially the geological column and the layers in the Grand Canyon and all that occurred within that gap. And then God, and some people feel that Satan got into a war. It kind of decimated the planet because of that war, and God really had to recreate the earth. And that would happen starting with verse 2, and you go through the rest of the Genesis account. The day-age theory is a little bit different. It says, well, when God says there is evening and morning the first day, evening and morning the second day, that doesn't really mean 24 hours of time. Instead, those are, basically unspecified long periods of time, epochs of time. So day one could have taken, millions or billions of years. Day two could have taken millions of billions of years. Day three, etc. The problem with all of these, and I'm not going to go into the details because we have way too much material to cover, is that they tend to dilute the nature of what happened in the beginning, of the fall. With the gap theory, with the day-age theory, death had already come into the world before Adam and Eve even were created. And so now you've got, destruction, death, disease, and things like that are, in existence prior to Adam and Eve. So what does that mean about the fall? Well, the wages of the sin is death, right? And so consequently, how does that have any meaning anymore? Because death occurred before Adam and Eve sinned. So it really dilutes that kind of concept. It also dilutes the fact that you needed a Savior. Because, again, God created everything through these naturalistic processes that included death. And, why do we need to be saved from death when it existed at all times? So the whole need for Jesus to come to the earth was essentially negated if you take these types of views. I'm not going to go any further with those because, again, there's some good material out there. If you want to read on it, I can provide that. But we're going to dismiss those as we proceed through the rest of the class. Okay. Somebody must have, I know what happened. Somebody helped me in the beginning there. Okay. These compromise theories, I do want to state one last thing, just to kind of wrap this up. Again, all of these try to marry the Bible with evolutionary type concepts. I find that these should be offensive to you, okay? As a Christian, it's offensive to me. And the reason is this, is it states because God is using evolution to do the creation in one way or another. He's essentially, creating all of these intermediate forms. And it's like, no, that didn't work. Oh, let's try something else. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, let's try something else. And millions and billions and trillions of times, he's attempting to create life that eventually is what we experience around us. And it just says he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know how to do it right the first time. So the little cartoon says, well, he created an amoeba thing. Oh, wait, that's extinct, no longer needed. Something better happened. Oh, God created an amphibian-looking thingy, and, that's extinct now. Something better happened. And then on up the chain until you get to the man at the end that says, well, who would want to believe in a God in which it took so many times of erasing prior life forms to bring him into the picture? Hank Hanegraaff of the Institute of Creation Research, there on the right hand of the screen, says, an omniscient God does not have to plod painfully through millions of mistakes, misfits, and mutations. And I would say not millions, but literally billions, trillions, quadrillions of retries to have fellowship with humans. As the Bible tells us, he can create humans instantaneously. So when you hear about people maybe thinking that the marrying evolution and the Bible is a good idea, generally speaking, no, it's not. To finish up with the material from last week, wanted to say, well, what are the resources that I use to help kind of put this stuff together? Focus Press, we're all familiar with that. Brad Harrop actually came to the building here and gave some great lectures. Apologetics Press, really awesome information on their website. Institute for Creation Research is Genesis History. We watched one of the films that they put out. Answers in Genesis, another good source. Unabashed, unashamed plug for the Linder Road Library behind that door right over there. Some great materials. If you guys run over there at the end of the class, I would not blame you whatsoever. Okay, let's go on. Going to get to the next one, is the cosmological argument. Some of you have probably heard of this already. Maybe you're well versed in it, not sure. It's been around a long time. However, it's still relevant. If you're unfamiliar with it, it might be a little bit new to you, the material, I hope so. If not, it's a reminder of something that you can actually keep in your back pocket. It's one of those things that you can have available in your mind if you ever talk to somebody about, does God really exist? Because in reality, it's not too hard to work down through the logic. And by the way, an argument is not a husband and wife fighting, okay? An argument is a structured way of actually proving something. So when you hear of arguments here, it's all about how to go through a proof in order to establish something that's true. So the cosmological argument has another name. It's also called the cause and effect. And it addresses one of the most basic issues that your mind might come up with. One of the basic questions that you might have is, does God really exist? And the thing is, it's either he does or he does not. No middle ground on that. The atheist is going to tell you that God does not exist. The theist, or people who believe in God, will boldly state that he does. Agnostic says, well, there's just not enough evidence, can't make a decision. And a skeptic simply doubts that God's existence can be proven. Well, who's true or who's right? Really, the only way to answer this question is to seek out and examine the evidence. And it seems reasonable to us that if we can answer this question, that God would have come to us and that he would have left evidence that we can look at. We know that from Romans, that he certainly has stated that. So again, does that evidence truly exist? Again, going back to this particular argument, throughout human history, the most effective one is the argument or the case of having cause and effect to help show that God does exist. It addresses the fact that the universe is here, and it certainly must be explained. So plants, animals, stars, the cosmos, galaxies, your everyday environment is here, and it does exist. But how did the universe actually get here? And the fact is, anybody with a rational mind is not going to deny that. Whether you're an atheist, whether you believe in God or not, or whether you do, we have to explain the universe, matter and energy that we see around us. Now, we'll throw out a definition here, and the definition is for the word contingent. If a thing cannot create itself or even self-describe itself, it's said to be contingent because it's dependent on something that's outside of itself to explain its existence. And the statement that we're making here is that the material universe, the universe that we see around us, is a contingent entity because it cannot explain its own existence, and therefore it needs a cause. Well, how do we know the universe is contingent? That's a good question. And as we will see as we go through here, we will find out that there's just no way that matter and energy can simply come out of nothingness. If that were the case, then it would not be contingent, okay? It would be able to self-describe itself, self-explain how it got here. Now, when we come to some of these natural laws that we have, understand for something to be a law, there cannot be an exception to it. And we've tested over the centuries many of the natural laws, sometimes in a less formal way, oftentimes in a very formal, very structured scientific way. Law of cause and effect is probably one of the most universal, well understood, because you live it in a day-to-day basis, okay? You live the law of cause and effect on a daily basis, and it's been never observed to have an exception. So what is it? Well, it says that every material effect, everything that can happen, must have an adequate and antecedent, which means prior to, cause. You can state it as the cause must come before the effect, and that the cause must be equal to or greater than that effect. Okay, so we'll make the statement, material effects without an adequate cause do not exist, okay? You might say, hey, my house was just destroyed. That's the effect. And your friend might say, well, how did your house get destroyed? And you might say, well, there's a tornado coming tomorrow. Okay, first of all, the cause here is the tornado and the effect. Sorry, I got a hit on my example there. Causes never occur after the effect is what I was going with that. But if you think about that, the cause has to come prior to the effect and it has to be greater than the effect. So the tornado has to come first in order to have the effect of destroying the house. On the screen there is actually an impact crater. It's one of the last few impact craters in North America that you can go visit. It's very large. You can't see it because the resolution on the screen, but there's a road actually by that. So if we were thinking of this as just a crater left behind by an explosive device, you would not think that a firecracker would be able to create such a crater. Perhaps the Moab bomb, which stands mother of all bombs, might be big enough to create an impact crater that big. But what we can assume for the laws of cause and effect here is that the cause had to be greater than the effect. And so we need a very, very big bomb in order to create a crater of that size. Secondly, the bomb had to exist and come before that impact crater in order for the effect to be created. Okay. Well, this should be something that you're very familiar with, right? It's cause and effect is simple. If I drop an anvil and it lands on my foot, the anvil had to drop before I actually feel the pain. And so there's an order to things in how the universe works. So for any type of effect that we see, we have to suggest an adequate cause. And we come back to the question, what did cause the universe? Because we're stating that the universe is an effect, not a cause. There's only three possible things three possible answers to that question. What caused the universe? Okay, the first one is, well, the universe is eternal. It's always existed and always will exist. That is certainly one possibility. The other ones are given in the category that the universe did not always exist. And so there's two possible situations there. If it did not always exist, then it created itself. That's certainly one case. Alternatively, if the universe did not always exist, then it was created by something or perhaps someone outside of it and superior to it, because that would be the cause and it would be greater than that. So we're going to look at these three cases. So the first one is, well, is the universe eternal? It's a very comfortable position for those who don't believe in God because it avoids them having to, come up with a beginning and an end, right? If there's a beginning, then you have to ask what happened before the beginning. And so that gets an uncomfortable position. They never have to have that so-called first cause. I put in parentheses such as God there. Well, okay, so how do we address this? We have to look at some other laws, and these are the laws of thermodynamics, and you guys are probably like going, whoa, I didn't know this was a science class, right? Okay, don't worry. These are very straightforward. Science recognizes that the universe is not eternal. It had a beginning, and it will have an end. And the laws of thermodynamics help tell us that that is the case. So the first law of thermodynamics is often stated the law of conservation of energy and matter. That sounds like a mouthful, but really it says this. It basically says matter and energy can neither be created or destroyed. Okay? It can be transformed Matter can go to energy, energy can go to matter, but you can't get rid of it. You'll either have matter or energy left over at the end. So there's no new matter coming into the universe, and there's no matter going out of the universe. Matter or energy, when I say that, okay? That means the total mass, the total quantity of stuff in the universe, which includes energy, is constant. It's unchanging. It's set in stone, and it can change within itself, but the sum total never does change. This law of thermodynamics has a big implication on the second law. The second law is often called the law of increasing entropy, and you're going, what's that? And entropy here is basically the idea that everything is running down or wearing out. Energy over time is becoming less and less available for use. In reality, it's a measure of randomness, of disorderliness, of unstructuredness. And that is, we have measured always increasing. So the diagram there shows a structured set of little dots on the left-hand side, and over time they become less structured. Teenage children their rooms often exhibit a very high level of entropy, okay? It's because they start in a good state and often end up in a very unstructured and disorderly state. Taking these two together, you can directly conclude, and again, these are very well tested laws. Thermodynamics have been tested for, like I say, centuries. The universe eventually is going to wear out, run down. So what does that say? It says, and basically points to a time in the past when the universe had all of the energy available. It points to a beginning, okay? And if there's a beginning, then the universe is not eternal, right? And skipping down there a little bit. It also points to an end when basically the universe has no more available energy to do anything with. This is often referred to as the heat death of the universe, not because everything's hot, it's actually because everything's cold. There's no energy left to be warmed by, essentially. You can liken it to a giant watch that's running down. It was wound up at one time. Eventually, it will wind down. It's likened to a battery that's charged up at the beginning. As you use that energy, it goes and it has no more available energy left in it. All of these basically say that at some time in the past, the universe had all of this energy available, and at some time in the future, nothing will be available. A beginning and an end. So far, new theories are trying to contradict this. I often think in my head, it's like, wait, Christopher, wait, have not you heard of some of these new theories where the universe is going through an expansion and then a contraction period? So in the beginning, a big bang happened. You've heard of that, of course. Everything expanded. It starts to get out there, and then eventually gravity pulls everything back in, and it collapses on itself back into that infinitesimally small little point in space and time. And sometime past that, it expands again, and then everything gets remade, it collapses in, and it goes through this cycle of expanding and collapsing. Each time you might get different laws of physics, you might get different ways that time and matter and energy happen, but in the end, all of that is eternal. Those are theories that are out there. Well, all right, we have a hard enough time proving, what happened yesterday. How are we going to look past, in their minds, the Big Bang? Where is the evidence to support those types of theories of an expansion and a contraction? There is none. All evidence would be wiped out as it collapsed back in on itself. And so consequently, those are just fanciful stories that cosmologists are coming up with to try to get past the idea that the universe is eternal. So we can mark that one off. we can state without any doubt whatsoever the universe is not eternal. That leaves us, well, did the universe either create itself or was it created by something else? So if you look at in the past, it would be almost impossible to find a reputable science to be willing to suggest that the universe simply created itself. And the reason is because there's very strong evidence that the universe had a beginning and thus had a cause, but they're going to try to tell you that it had to literally create it out of nothing, because if it had a beginning, what came before that beginning? Well, it had to be nothing. Otherwise, there would have been something. And so for the beginning to happen, there had to be, nothing out there. Well, to suggest that the universe can create itself out of nothing is pretty absurd. Okay? Those who do not believe in God have been willing to defend it, though, even though it's a clear violation of the first law of thermodynamics, which says, no new matter or energy is being created. That would have been the case back at the point where there was nothing. And sorry, lost my train of thought here. Because we have something right now that is unchanging in terms of the laws of thermodynamics. If there's something now, there always had to be something, but we just said that the universe had a beginning. Thus, you get into this situation where there is, this point where you have to say, well, if there was nothing before, then it automatically somehow created itself. Now, we know matter and energy can change over time. Nuclear reactors, we do this all the time as the nuclear fuel breaks down. It's releasing energy. Atomic bombs do this very quickly in the form of atomic reactions. The sun's doing this all the time. So matter can be converted to energy, but we know that the total amount does not change. And so if there was nothing in the beginning, there should be nothing now. Again, it puts you into a point where you come up with some absurd ideas to get around that. We have to rely in these types of situations on our observations, in being able to reproduce it, to have empirical data. But all of this points to where we cannot say that nothing is eventually going to yield something. And so the universe did not create itself because there was nothing to create it from. But you'll find scientists, and even very reputable ones like the author of this book up here, heavily suggesting that something can come from absolute nothingness. Now, I must say that people have a problem with absolute nothingness. If I walk into a room and there's nothing in it, and you ask me, hey, what's in the room? I'll just say, well, nothing. But that's not the case, right? There's walls, the floor, there's air. There's a lot of something in that room where there's nothing. Well, what if I go out into the, into outer space, even maybe out into interstellar space? And the fact of the matter is, that's got a lot of nothingness out there. It's total vacuum, but it's not nothing. And the reason is you can look around and you can see the stars. That light that's coming to your eyes is something. There's even, where you might say, well, I'm going to go to the edge of the universe. Well, I can't see the stars. There's no lights whatsoever. And the problem is, yeah, but there's still something. It's the whole structure of space-time. There's space and there's time. That's something. There's things that, if you get into quantum mechanics, there's quantum fields, and that the scientists theorize, and again, a lot of these theories are being tested in different ways, that theorize these quantum fields is what kind of brings about space-time. Well, those quantum fields still exist out there. Just because there's no matter, there's no energy, does not mean that there's no nothing. We have as people, a very, very difficult time to envision what literally nothing means, because all of that would have to go away. You wouldn't even have the ability to think of space-time in a truly nothing situation. And so to think that nothing generated something is, quite frankly, a little bit absurd, though that's what they're left with. People who do not believe in God really have no place to turn to, because they have to come up with a way of describing all the somethingness that is around us. So we can mark off here that the universe created itself, because it's just common sense. If you start with nothing, you'll have nothing. But we don't have nothing, we have something, therefore something had to exist. So the last case is, well, the universe was created out from something outside of it. And the law of cause and effect states that wherever we have a material effect, i.e. the universe, must be an adequate cause that came before it. However, the fact of the matter is that the effect can't be greater than the cause, and so we know from the prior discussion the universe is not eternal. The universe could not have created itself, and so really we're stuck with the universe was created by something or someone that came before it and is greater than that universe. Okay, so to have the universe exist, this something or someone must have existed prior to the universe. It must have some eternal, uncaused nature about it. In other words, because the universe had a beginning, this something or someone must have an eternal nature, because it had to have always existed in order to bring about the universe. It has to be superior to itself, since the created universe can't be superior to the creator. And it has to be different in nature than the universe, since a finite, independent, contingent, material universe is simply unable to explain itself. Something had to provide that explanation. Just a recap again, probably get through this very fast, this one. Basically, if nothing existed, nothing would exist now. No matter, time, energy, space, no quantum fields, no intent, no meaning, no intelligence, nothing that we're familiar with would exist at this time if truly nothing existed before the beginning of the universe. So, how do we think about this thing or this someone who existed prior to the beginning of the universe? Well, we can break down essentially the existence of everything into two categories. It's either matter, which includes energy, or it's mind, ability to think, reason, perceive, to imagine, to dream. That's very different than matter itself. Now, yes, somebody's going to raise their hand out and say, well, wait a second, Christopher. Atheistic evolutionists have been always pointing out that the mind is really nothing more than a function of the brain. Your brain is your mind. The two are equal. And because your brain is matter, then the whole concept of mind is a function of matter. So really there's no mind and matter, it's just matter. All right? That's one position to take, and up for a while, there was really no challenge to that until Dr. Eccles. So Sir John Eccles was, researching the functions of the brain, okay? He was an Australian physiologist. He won the Nobel Prize for his discoveries regarding how certain portions of the brain work, and he documented in his book and in his research that the mind is more than merely physical. In other words, the mind is more than just how the brain operates. So I'll read this quickly. He showed that the supplementary motor area of the brain may be fired by mere intention to do something without the actual motor cortex operating and get involved. Okay, what does that mean? It means one portion of the brain, one portion of the neurons that compose your brain would actually activate without any physical input to them. Now, a quick picture of what your brain looks like is you have nerve cells, okay? On one side there is the dendrites. They sort of accept information, accept excitation from other nerve cells. There's the stem of the nerve cell, and then on the other side is what's called the axon. The axon is effectively what tickles the other brain cells around them. And, you know, your brain is composed of, 100 billion of these nerve cells. That's a lot of nerve cells. And they have literally over 60 trillion connections between them. And what he's saying is there is a time when he's shown that some of those nerve cells could be fired without any input. And that doesn't make sense. The physical brain was able to react to something other than the physical inputs of the nerve cells. And he says that was really based on the intent, that something else outside of the normal excitation of the dendrite or of the neuron was able to fire it. And what he concluded is that your brain can fire without you having the other input. And I'm trying to kind of collapse this down in my head here really fast so that we can get through the remainder of the slides in the 4 minutes that I have. Which part of your dendrites are flashing? Oh my gosh, I'm lit. I'm like a Christmas tree right now. What does that mean? That means the mind is more than the brain, okay? And I point to Matthew 10:28. We were told this by God himself. He was the one who architected us, built us, designed us. He says, don't be afraid of those who can kill the body and cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both the body and the soul in hell. We got more than one piece to us that compose, us. So, to kind of conclude the whole cosmological argument, with trying to identify what could the cause be for the universe. Basically, everything that exists is either matter or mind. Something exists now, so something eternal must have always existed. So either matter or mind is eternal, but we know matter is not eternal because of all the laws of thermodynamics. And thus, it has to be mind that is eternal. So as we go through here, we can say, well, universe is not eternal, wasn't creating itself, had to be created by something. It's the mind that's eternal, and the matter is created. And of course, we put a label on that mind, and that is the name of God. God has to be eternal. God had to exist in order for the universe to come into existence. So the law of cause and effect, again, kind of going over that. Everything is here: intelligent life, morality, ethics, love. What is the prior adequate antecedent cause, the cause that came before the universe? Must be living, must be eternal intelligence, that it itself is moral and ethical and loving. And when the Bible tells us in the beginning, God, it simply states who that eternal mind is that caused the bell to ring. I was going to go through these. These are interesting scriptures that show the different laws of thermodynamics. So here's a couple of scriptures for the first law of thermodynamics. Here's a couple of scripture, or one scripture for the second law of thermodynamics, because where moth and rust and destroy, Jesus was saying, this is exactly what the second law of thermodynamics predicts. It's why your cup of coffee gets cold. It's why your things get rusty. And finally, nothing yielding nothing is simply stating God created everything, and nothing was created outside of Him. This sidebar, I'll just leave it for now, but basically saying we are a very complicated and wonderfully made being that has both a physical and spiritual side to us, and God formed us perfectly, and we can be very grateful for that. Okay, wow, got through that, although at a rapid pace. Thank you.